Okay. Okay, I'm going live. Good evening to anyone who's listening. Um, we do not live in a logical world. I'm going on again. I hope there's one person out there that's listening, somewhere in the big wide world. I don't think it'd be very local, but that would be better if it was, because the way this world operates, you probably have your biggest impact if you are trying to put something across, an idea, or express yourself in any way. Obviously, um, it's better if it's closer, because there's more close vibration, shall we say. But we do have the internet now. We do have what I'm doing now. So I guess that's, a possibility. But I would think that the further away you are, that actually is not really where you're, because where I'm living is going to be different to maybe the person that I'm speaking to, right? But on the other hand, we do not live in a logical world, and to some extent, I think that although different places do have different circumstances, I'm going to try to speed it up. I'm lingering, I'm not very good at this. Look, even though that is the case, we do not live in a logical world, and in a funny kind of way, because we don't live in a logical world, what appears to be that everything is different is actually almost the same. It just, the whole world is actually covered by the same mentality in a way. I'm trying to put it. If I was putting it in my own words, I would say the whole world is covered by the same disease. That's how I see it. But it's not good to think of it that way, because look, it is just essentially how you're going to see it, right? It's a bit like in the past, if people didn't agree with your religion, they saw the other religion as a disease and a bad thing, and to be exterminated and wiped out, which was how humans have operated from, because I was watching something once. I always mention something that I might have seen on the TV a night before, because these days I seem to pick up the bad vibes of every single thing. Well, by that I mean that I notice, well, I mean, I would have noticed this before anyway, but now it fits a whole pattern, whereas before I would have sort of put it in an isolated way and sort of said, oh, that was a bad period in human history, that's an isolated period of time. But I do not think that now. I think it's a continuum. I think it's always been there, and I think it has not changed much at all. We have not really broken from that kind of bad mentality, shall we say. Oh, I'm not quite sure how to put this, but what I am saying is that, yeah, and we do not live in a logical world, right? This world is not, we act out in it, but we do not control it. Our control over it is extremely limited. Um, it is ruled, you could say ruled, I have to use words even though I don't like to use certain words really, but it is it is ruled, controlled, dominated, influenced, directed in every way by the God, shall we say, for want of a better word, because there again, I don't like to use the word God, but what word do you use for entities, whether they be human or not, right? And I use that too because we assume that everything is always human, but if you're talking about God-like influences, God-like control, in other words, something beyond your own comprehension, that's what we use the term God for, where something is pretty much beyond our own comprehension, beyond our own 3D kind of sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, our senses, in other words, what we perceive, because we can't perceive anything beyond that. I don't know that this is how it's meant to be, but that is how it is. I don't think it's how it was meant to be originally. No, I've said this before. I think that we have lost so much of our natural abilities. And when I say natural, I mean natural, that they were natural. They would seem super duper if we actually had them now. We would seem like the supercomputer that we seem to be chasing. We should have been that super duper computer, but naturally. But we have now become a very limited computer, shall we say, a very limited one, a very limited natural computer, whereas we should have been a super duper computer, no need of any other computers, but instead, and so now we are relying on artificial computer to try to achieve that goal, which could be achieved, but it will be in opposition to our natural state, and therefore maybe not to our benefit at all, because if you go against this is the danger, and this is what I've said even to the people who would see that as great progress, and I can see where they're coming from, so I'm not criticising them, and some of those people are much minds than mine. Just hold on. Oh, yes, yep. You can head out. Okay. Just like 2 minutes, then come. Okay. Okay. Oh. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Don't get many phone calls, but you know. What was I saying now? I've lost my train of thought. That's no good, is it? Uh, yeah. The idea of that we should have been so much better than what we actually are. I think the human body that should have helped us evolve, this natural human body that we now, myself included, see as very decrepit and failing and full of disease and illness and all sorts of things, which it shouldn't be. Um, it's a liability almost, and that's how human beings are seeing it, and it has become that way. This is not how it was meant to be. It was meant to be, I think, a how shall I say? I'm trying to find the right word. It was meant to be in conjunction with the mind and the spirit to kind of, to reach higher levels of perception and abilities, right? Now that's what it was meant for, but instead it has been crippled and deactivated, you could almost say. I don't know, I'm trying to find the words because I'm not a scientist, and I'm just a very average person that's trying to piece together things, but I see things because, see, the trouble is in this world is that we have so many people that are much smarter than me. We might even have geniuses, right? Because I'm no genius. You know, I'm down the lower level. But sometimes, even when you're down the lower levels, you're still able to see things. And, you know, what I'm trying to say is that it's no good being a great scientist. It's no good being a great scientist. It's no good being a genius like so many of the people that we see around. They are, and they're brilliant minds, but they're kind of they're misdirected. They're not. They're using their brilliance, but you know, it's like everything. If you operate under a misapprehension or you go along a wrong path, shall we say, then you're going to still be doing brilliant things, but they're not going to be beneficial for yourself down the track, because a bit like creating Frankenstein's monster, right? You know what I'm saying? You know, like that's genius, but he was wrong, and he was not creating something better for himself or for other human beings, and not even for the monster, because the monster didn't want to live in an alien world where he was rejected and not welcomed and not comfortable. And this is the same with human beings. We are meant to be these natural beings, right? And so if we create monsters, by that I mean things that are different to us. Now, you know, we might not see it as monsters, you know, because if it's glossed over, if it doesn't look like Frankenstein, if it looks pleasant, or we get used to and it appeals to us, then that doesn't change the fact that it's still alien to us. If you follow my gist, are you following my gist? Because you know, I'm trying to be subtle in everything I do. I'm going to try to be subtle. I could just bang you over the head with it, which it's been banged over my head, and believe you me, if it's banged over your head, it's very distressing, because it's a shock to the system. It's too much, really. I know that myself. It's like, hey, you need to ease into things, you do. And particularly if you're not open to it, you know. You know, I had to open myself up to it whether I liked it or not. I didn't want to. And, you know, I preferred to have lived in my logical little fantasy world that used to be. I would have preferred to have stayed in that, to be honest. Even though it meant that I knew nothing and was living, yes, in a fantasy world. Because we don't live in a logical world, but we think we do. And it's comforting to think that we do live in a logical world. It's comforting. It's not comforting to know that you live in an illogical world, that everything that you think, see, smell, taste, and around you is not really what you think. That's not very comforting. It's actually quite disturbing, it's distressing, particularly as we have not got the abilities. Like I say, we are now limited. So that is very strange to us. And so we have to stick with our practical, logical thing. And we go to the computer for this. You know, we go to the computer for this. We think that is logical and practical, so it keeps us safe. We find a comfort in that. But comforting as it may be, you know, a teddy bear is comforting. You know, and I say, you know, I like teddy bears. Have a teddy bear, but don't be deluded to think that it will save you from everything. Don't think that your little comfort device will save you. Don't think that it will benefit you in any way. If there's catastrophes, you know, there's an earthquake tomorrow, having your mobile phone in your hand won't do you any good. It'll go down with you. Whereas maybe if you had developed yourself naturally, this is going to sound ludicrous, you might have had a chance of survival. I can't explain that. I can in another video maybe. And there again, it is speculation. And you'd have to weigh it up whether you think there's any truth to any of these things. And I've no doubt that you will think there isn't, because like I say, we think we live in a logical world, but we really don't. So if we think we live in a logical world, and people and lots of people like myself, the few that are seeing things from a different side, I see it from a different side because I know that side exists. I see it, but I can't expect someone else to see it until they see it for themselves. It's a bit like in the Matrix movie, right? I saw that recently, and it's so true. He's like, "What is the Matrix?" He says, or something. He said, the fella says, "What is the Matrix? I want to know what the Matrix is." Well, believe you me, the Matrix is real, but we're not going to go into that either. But he says, "What is the Matrix?" He says, "Unfortunately, you know, no one can be told what the Matrix is. They have to see it for themselves." But that is the problem because, like I say, we do live in a illogical world, but we think we live in a logical world. So, in other words, yes, we think we don't live in the Matrix um, illogical world. We think we live in the logical unmatrix world. And unless you see it for yourself, like Leo or Neo, should I say, um, you still would find it very hard to comprehend. There are lots of people, well, when I say lots, I mean lots in the sense that there could be thousands, there could be this, but but lots that's like nothing, or even if you had 1 million people, that's nothing in comparison with the fact that we have 8 billion people on this planet. So basically, the people who see that um, are in such small numbers that they look ratty and look mad and not and like I say, even some of those have not seen it, but they've been able to piece it together. That's very hard to do. It's if you see something, then you believe it, and that's the bottom line. So this is the dilemma. This is the problem. Um, how do you show people something, without showing it directly, and you can't show it directly. So it becomes, the whole system and setup on this planet is designed so that everything appears logical, even though it's not. So this is what I'm saying. So it makes it very hard to show that. Um, it's like believing in fairy tales. Um, when you've never went through the looking glass, Alice didn't believe in fairy tales or magical lands until she went through the looking glass. So this is what it is like. But I will say this, even science is now almost telling people that there is much more to things. If you really, even though I'm not, like I say, a very ignorant person, but um, I do get tidbits and I pick up on that and say, yes, that fits it, and sometimes if you know something, if it's presented to you, then you don't have to be smart, you know. So I don't have to be smart. Everyone else has to be a lot smarter, but I don't mean smarter by their smart devices. I would say the reverse, to be quite frank, but completely. But everyone else has to use their intelligence and their thinking much more because it hasn't been presented them. I haven't had to be real intelligent about it. I don't have to be an intelligent person because if you already know something, if it's just been thrown into your lap, you haven't had to use the intelligence, and which you should really, but you shouldn't have to in a way. We should know all these things anyway, as I've said before. But if most of our mind is closed off, and it is deliberately closed off too, so it's not like people wouldn't like to know things, but if this world is a different type of world, this world is a world, and even I don't fully comprehend if there's a purpose to this world. I assume there was originally, right? Now it seems to have got very diverted. Now, if there's a purpose for that, there could be. It could be like a great big way of people almost of sorting things out. But I don't believe that. I believe it's just gone that way. You know, the more enlightened or the more optimistic people might want to look at all these things from different angles, almost to say, well, this is a test now for the good and the bad, the light and the dark, and all this stuff. I don't believe that. I believe it's just gone a certain way. Because, you know, if you, the actual planet, I shouldn't, world, I will say world, I won't go into planets and stuff like that because that may or may not be a correct way of looking at this realm that we live in. You know, I don't have all the answers yet, but I do know if there is so much mass kind of deception and it is not what we all think, then even the way you look at your reality could be totally false. You know, in other words, you know, we could be, you know, we may or may not be what we think is our actual kind of universe or whatever, may not be 100% correct. It could be too, but because it's because obviously it's only a very small percentage of what actually is, and so this realm that we live in, the way I see it and the way it probably is, well, it must be this way. It is very much it's cut off from a lot of the rest, right? And I believe that it's probably quite a lot different to the rest, or to uh, other realms, shall we say. Uh, this is a darker realm where we live. It was created here, I believe, or I am directed to believe, and unless I find out different, I will go along with this, right? That it is ruled, shall we say, controlled, directed, uh, everything about it has been created, this actual realm, by uh, a being, shall we say, an entity, very superior um, to what we would consider ourselves, different to us, but has created our world. Different to us in the sense that I believe, what I've been directed to believe, more technological. We are more non-technological. I guess that's a way of looking at it, because I'm no scientist, and even scientists, I don't think, get things 100%. Some do, probably, those that, you know, but not what the scientists that we deal with, because they very much are going along a technological line in some ways. I'm not quite sure why they are, because to me it seems that if you can clone a sheep 30 years ago or something, you shouldn't have to be building mechanical parts for human beings. You know what I'm saying? I don't quite get that. That's something to think about. I don't know. I don't get that. You know, and that's even for your so-called futurists and transhumans and whatever, you know, like, I don't get that. Maybe they can explain that, because to me that seems to be illogical, even for them. But, you know, that's up to them. I don't criticise them, because I can see how one can be seduced, shall we say. But it's no good being seduced by you know, an evil woman type of thing. You know, if you're going to be seduced by something that is going to benefit you. But anyway, you know, I'm not going to go into that too much because it's a big topic and there's too much information for my little spots. And even I don't have all the answers because I can only say, you know, if you've got two paths to take, you've got decisions to make. And I've said this before, it's all about choice. Humans have always had choice, evidently, from what I can see. You wouldn't know it if you looked at the planet. You'd think that, you know, because even the entity that controls the planet, and look, you have to say, if the entity, I can't use the names and words because I'm not 100% sure at this point, and I don't know if I'm supposed to even, but you know, you'd have to say it's, I would say it's one of the gods, right? It's the god of this planet anyway. There's no doubt about that. Because if something controls, rules, and created the place, then it is the god of this planet. Now, if you want to remain separate and just in this realm, then you will go along with that, and that will be your god, and it is the god of the planet anyway. So I mean, your only really choice is to stay here and abide by the god of the planet, or go. Now, most people are going to be too frightened to go, and they're going to say, where would you go? And, you know, like, is that dying and whatever? And that's the truth. It is. The only way you leave this planet is when you die. So, you know, look, there could be another way. You know, you'd have to look up other videos and other people to find that out. I'm not going to be that. But certainly this is a darker planet, much darker than what we realise. By that I mean that I don't think this world operates on the higher enlightenment kind of level, really. No, there are some beings on it that do, and they seem to be okay, but there's an awful lot that operate that aren't okay too, so I don't know. So I can't speak on that. I'm not one of them, but I'm still not okay too. So it shows that you can that if you're trying to get into that higher, happier state, shall we say, it is very hard on this planet. It is not that type of domain. This is a darker domain. It's a domain like that, and it's been like that for a long time, since almost the beginning, I would say. Now, the being gods, I shouldn't say in plural because I don't know that it's plural, but I do know that it could be plural outside of this domain, right? I'm not saying that the God that rules this domain rules everything, you know, at all. But, you know, because we have these concepts of God, even religious people, where there is this God that created everything. So you'd have to say, if this God was kind of like a goody God, without sounding funny, you know, I mean, it doesn't sound right. This is very serious stuff, and yet I'm trying to make light of it. But because it does sound ridiculous in a way, but if the God that created, say, everything, then how do we have this God that rules this domain that's different to that? How do we have that? That's an interesting point. So that's where you have to look into other videos, I would suggest, you know, not mine. I could talk about it. Maybe I will at some point. But no, but you know, if let's just say that if the God that created everything, if there, in other words, you know, if if the God kind of created everything and threw his stuff out there, shall we say, and don't forget we are part of that too. And if you kind of go biblically, then we are actually quite important, or we should have been. We're not now, I don't think, no. I think that whatever we were, like I say, plonked here for, we have went away from that. Now, if you want to go back, like I say, to the Garden of Eden and all that stuff, you can, because there is a bit of elements of truth, I think, in all that. I'm not saying it's 100%, but it does have some historical merit for our evolution, our development, shall we say, or our de-development. I would say our de-development. I do not look at, as I've said before, I do not think we have evolved, we have devolved. Very much so. But that's the controversial thing too, and I've said it before, and I will continue to say it until someone can prove to me any different. And I can't prove it the other way. But actually, it's rather nice if humans did look at it that way, because they're making themselves, if only they knew it, it means that they are important instead of, you know, inferior to even the technology that's around them, which seems to be their mindset now. This is a very much a pity, I think. Well, more than a pity, you know. Words make things very mild. Words cannot possibly express the seriousness of these concepts and the implications and the direction that the seeds of light, you could almost say, that were plonked here by the master creator. When I say master, perhaps I shouldn't even use the word master, because it, you know, I've been told that it is more feminine than masculine, just very recently, only yesterday in fact, because we are very much directed on this planet towards the masculine as far as godlike things. Not always, I mean, there are female gods too. The only reason I say that is because, look, we were created here as masculine and feminine to show us things, you know, I think. Now, the thing is that with the feminine thing, and this is where females on this planet have degenerated greatly. And I have to say this, even though I have been one of those females that would have promoted that degeneration. Seriously, because females now think it is desirable to follow the male trend, the male, to be like a male, to do what males do. You know, they've got the jealousy thing going, the competitive thing going. I've got to prove myself that because that's what's been set up on this planet. In reality, the female, the nurturing, the creating of other human beings, that is the real future. That is everything. That is what the creator has in essence. So in essence, the creator, if it's there, would be more female, because it's creating, you know, not competing, not proving they're superior, not proving they're better always, and actually indicating that they're inferior by the need to compete with the male aspect and defeat and show, oh, he's got that job, I've got to do that job. Forget about my kids, I'll just leave them at home and bugger about the creative, the future of mankind, of humankind, I say. See, they're going to be saying mankind, humankind. Because that is more important to compete with the male at the present time and forget about the human race's future. That's not important. No, it's more important to do some silly masculine job. You know, I see women doing stupid things now, and I whereas I once would have thought, oh, that's good. Now I think how stupid they look because it shows that they've been brainwashed into thinking they have to compete. They're like, oh, I'm not really as physically strong as a man, but I better get out there and prove I am by doing a male job. It's childish. That is not the creative being. That is not superiority. That is inferiority. You know, and the more women go along that line, which they have, I'm not going to use terms because, like I say, I always thought that women were very superior. Even before all this so-called equal stuff come around, right? I always thought women were superior because they, on an average, their intelligence, they did know things. But instead, they were tricked into believing that men were somehow better and that they had to compete. Um, this is weird. Why would you compete with some? See, men are better in some ways. They can do things. Like if someone's got a stronger strength, why should you be stupid enough to think that you have to lift a heavy weight if you're half the size and your bones are not as this or that. There's no common sense to that. You know, like I say, I know I'm getting very confused myself, but just think about it. Like, why would you even want to do that? And what is the point? It's where your brain has been taken over by some other force telling you that you have to compete and do this instead of saying, hey, I already am. I am what I am. I am got all the abilities I need. That fella that has a bit more strength in some way, he is here to help me. That's what this planet was meant to be about, not about this competition. It was meant to be cooperation. The male and female were meant to cooperate. Um, that's why we were put here, not to be separate, to help. Um, I mean, God only knows that we use everything else to help us. Why should you be annoyed if a man helps you, who is your own kind, your own natural thing, but you're quite happy to go and ask a computer for help and you'd probably be happy for a robot to lift a thing for you? How stupid are we? Have we lost our minds? Yes. Yes, we have. We're not only giving our body over, which, like I say, should have been used to help the progress with the mind too. The biological body is not as inferior. It's been made that way by the environment, you know. But you know, it's like saying, "Oh, I've got a car, right?" And it's a Rolls Royce, but I haven't looked after that Rolls Royce. You know, a Rolls Royce can become the biggest bloody bomb if, you know, to where it won't run and to where you would have to replace the parts with some other car parts or something because it hasn't been looked after. And I'm not blaming us for that. I don't blame us for that. This is the world we live in, where it's hard for us to even maintain our natural biological computer in order to reach the superior levels and to even know these things. To know these things, we don't know it because we are limited. Even the women that are, like I say, feeling inferior and this need to compete and all this stuff, instead of doing what comes natural for them, they're not operating at a high enough level to know that they are making themselves less instead of more. Because if you've got certain abilities, right, if you're a female or a male, how should I put it? I'm trying to put it in some way without getting into even the male-female rubbish, because it is rubbish in a way, but that's how our world thinks. So I have to talk rubbish in order to kind of put across something else. I have to come down to the rubbish level. We shouldn't have to even be having these discussions, right? because every individual on this planet should know that they were put here and that they are superior. They shouldn't have to compete with another person, but they do, because that's the way the setup is. Okay, so oh, I've lost my track. So if you are born a male or a female or anything, right, doesn't matter, you have abilities. But if those abilities are not shown to you and you go along another path where you try to develop a different ability that actually even isn't natural, shall we say, you try to compete. Now, you may even be successful, and it may make you feel good because you're feeding your ego, which is another false construct of this illogical reality. Human beings in their natural state don't have ego because they know they are. They know they are. They don't have to prove anything. But in this world we live in, we are not what we are, so we have to prove everything. We're down to this low level of competitiveness and trying to prove that we're better and doing things that we don't even need to do to prove it. Like I say, women doing the most stupid things to prove that they're somehow equal with a man. They already were equal with a man all along. It's all just a delusion, you know. And if someone can do something better than you in some way, then that means you do something better in the other way. But don't forget that if you have a natural ability to do something really good, in other words, supposing, let me see, try to use an example. In other words, supposing you were a female, right? And you were extremely telepathic, psychic. You could see things that other people can't see. You can read people's minds. You can do all this wonderful stuff. But, you know, you're born into this world where you see the man digging the ditch over in front of you, and you're like, oh, wow, that man thinks he's better than me digging the ditch. I think I'll drop all this these abilities that I naturally have. Not that you would have been aware of them in this world anyway, because that's unfortunate. But what I am trying to say is, even if you had a glimpse that you had some other ability, which is what you were naturally meant to do, and that is your higher ability, that's where you become superior. Because instead you decide, I'm going to compete with that man over there and play a game of football or dig the dirty ditch he's digging, you know, you've been sidetracked. You're not superior. You might have defeated that man over there, the poor bugger that's not even not doing you any harm and would actually help you. Instead, you will be tricked into competing in his area instead of developing your own natural area where you would have really excelled, where you could have reached the stars, shall we say. I'm talking about the real stars too, not fantasy ones, because you probably won't even be that happy competing, digging that ditch. You'll think you will for a while you're feeding the ego. But that's all a delusion. The ego is insatiable, remember that. The ego is never satisfied. And the ego is a devil. The ego ruins lives. The ego never makes people happy because it has to be fed all the time. It's never satisfied. It's not like you feed it and then you say, oh, I'm happy now, I'm blissful for the rest of my life. No, it doesn't work that way. It's insatiable. It's always beating away at you. You're never happy. You never can be. That's what I've discovered anyway. And I've had the ego on my back, for a lot of my life. That's why I've never actually lived it, because it's always like someone else has got more. You're just little me that's nothing, and you think that you can't be happy because you are not showing that you're as good as everyone else, or better than everyone else even, or at least competing with them. And, this is how this world operates. But if only we realise that it's a delusion. It's not even real, this actual thing. This competition, this world that we compete in is not real. That's the tragedy of it, because it would be bad for us to be doing it even if it was real. It wouldn't be creating a better future. But The truth is that we are just like a joke. The God that controls our domain, sees this, and I say he for this time, for strangely enough, there again, because I think that the God that controls this planet is much more of a kind of masculine influence in a way. And by that I mean that more controlling, less creative, more destructive, more dominating, more power. That's how I see it. But that seems to be the way of the world. Like I say, and that's very much how it's gone more and more. So the God has not directed people away from that, and we seem to, and that's for human beings to use their own free will and a bit of sense, something, to realise this. But it's very hard to do that when that is the world that we're living in, the world we're conditioned all the time to, more and more. Every day we're bombarded with that. It's relentless to where we can't be ourselves. And like I say, if we did have any abilities, even born into this world, we wouldn't even know of them. We'd be automatically directed down a competitive type path, I think. And most people are so used to it that they actually enjoy it. They actually think that it's natural. They think that it's enjoyable, and they don't realise that it is very. I think it is very. Whilst even I enjoy watching competitive things, right? I appreciate them, but I also recognise that there is a destructive element to it all. So you do have to keep above it. But I don't think most people do. They get right down into it, and it infiltrates their reality. It permeates their whole existence. It influences their relationships with other human beings. And I think the whole planet is, the whole world, I don't want to use the word planet again, but the whole reality that we live in is completely dominated by this. The whole world almost. There would be only very few individuals who have aware enough to have risen above it. And even if you're aware, sometimes you still can't get above it. I'm aware, but I have not risen above it. The secret is to rise above it, because even to be aware is not enough. It's part, and if everyone was aware, then as a joint thing, perhaps then there would be some harmony, shall we say. But, look around and see if this is not true in the world and think about it. But it's very hard to make it a reality for people. It's very hard to say to human beings, hey, you are so much more than what you think you are. Every individual, see there again, the individual even is pushed down on this planet, but at the same time the ego boosts it up. It's a very contradictory thing. But I think in the natural state, without the ego, every individual knows they are important and they're happy with their natural abilities because that's how they're meant to evolve. But if they are directed into other directions, it'd be a bit like I'm born, I feel from the day when I'm born, there again these days, even from the day you're born, it starts. So it's not like you even have a choice sometimes. Because like in the past, many, many, many years ago, if you were born, you might, like I know when I was real young, I had the urge to use my body in a dance way, but that was crushed very early on, but I still remember it, right? Now, these days, I don't think I would even, and maybe if I had been in a different environment, or even been more aware of myself, I might have pursued that and pushed it more, right? Doesn't matter now. I'm just saying that whatever you get that vibe for is where you're probably meant to go a bit, right? Okay. And either way, you should just do it for your own pleasure, because if you do something for your own pleasure, even if no one else sees it, you will improve your mind, you see. So it's a mind thing. Even the physical, like I say, the body was meant to combine to help the mind, because it's really all about the mind, really, in a way. But the body was meant to be part of our help to improve the mind. So the body is important in a way, but if the body deteriorates, then the mind cannot elevate itself either, over a lifetime anyway, because that's why we're here, you see. We're put into this body and this kind of situation. Um, that's how it seems to be. And that is how it is. I think whether you, whatever you believe in, we know that because we're here, you know, um, and we were given this body. So, but of course, most people think everything is so random and so haphazard that they belittle the body, they belittle their own mind, they belittle everything. And that you can understand, because that's definitely how it appears to be. Um, because that is the world we live in. But that's the construct of this world. The God is testing, and I say he because, like I say, the I think this planet is ruled by a masculine force, in the sense that, and this is wrong too, but I'm just using this as an example because this is how you humans think. This is how we think. The masculine force, the female force is always meant to have been more nurturing, more creating. The masculine force is always more fighting, more destructive, more dominating. That's how we think, and there is a bit of truth to that. But like I say, it's a dangerous thing using these masculine and feminine type things, and even to me, it becomes very confusing, and it really does. But I use it for the purpose because this planet is much more ruled by a godlike presence that is much more destructive, dominating, and masculine, if you want to look at it that way. It's certainly not ruled by a nurturing, caring, creating force. It is ruled by a destructive force. And humans participate in that, which explains the environment and the world the way it is, because considering that it should be a lot different to what it is, and most people are very much into that now with their climate type of stuff and all that, but they're way off track, of course. But the thing is that you can't tell them that either. But the thing is, because it is not something that, you know it's not something that we actually have that much control over. We participate in it, sure. And, if we had the right mindset, we wouldn't be participating in it. But we have been lured into that thing. Like I use too much plastic, right? But that's because they created the plastic to take me down that path. I didn't create it. And if it hadn't been created and we didn't have it everywhere, then we wouldn't use it. So it's a bit of a trap that way, because we say, oh, well, humans created it, but we didn't, because we do not rule this planet. This is not our domain. We are here, but it is not our domain. It is controlled by our God, the God of this planet. I don't say that it's necessarily our God in the bigger picture, but it is the God of our domain, and we are in this domain, right? And everything that is put in this domain is controlled by the God that controls this world. It's just common sense, even though we don't live in a logical world, as I say, because what we think that we do it all. We think that that the you know that yeah, we think that we do it, even if we know that we feel quite powerless anyway. But in reality, everything we do is a direction. You know, I mean, why is it that, like I've mentioned before, with even women and the thing, why is it that at some point women were happy to be the mother? And this is just an example, even though I'm not using it or trying to go along feminists or those sorts of lines. I think that is all part of the trap too. It all becomes, it's a joke. It's all a trap. It's all like where even if you say stuff, then you get into an argument, and it's not about that. I'm just saying that forgetting the issues themselves, why is it that at one point women were happy to be a certain way, or at least they were a different way, and then now they feel much more competitive, much more the need to do this? And I'm saying that this is not a natural evolution of the female. I'm saying that this is the path that they're pushed down because they do not rule their own domain. None of us do. We do not rule this planet. We do not make our own decisions. The God of this planet makes all the decisions for us. We are shown certain things and pushed. We could back off, but that takes a lot of willpower. And if we think that we're shown things and it seems to make sense, and we're given the hormones to make us feel good about it, or to this, you know, it's. I'm saying that we have very, very, very little control or choice, right? So if you think that every time you do something groundbreaking, and you think you're some great female that does some male job, and you think, wow, aren't I a big deal? You're not. You're less than the person who does bugger all, because you're just a mind-controlled, silly bimbo that is pushed down by the God a particular path, and he laughs. And I don't blame him, because he's laughed at me most of my life too. So what I'm trying to say is, because he's like, hey, you can't think for yourself at all, you know, because humans are meant to think a little bit for themselves, but they don't, because they're in this construct world, this illogical world that they think is logical, and they're maneuvered by it. They're just pushed around, moved around. We are all just pawns. And until we realise that, we will continue to be those pawns, and God only knows where it'll take us. Well, God does know where it'll take us. The God of this world knows exactly where it's going to take us all. He knows. That entity knows. And he has the power and the means, and he uses them every day. And we only have a very little bit of free will left to decide if that is what we want, because it is still our decision. I mean, it's our decision, and even the female of the species, it's her decision to go along the competitive, destructive line, or to go back to the nurturing, creative line, where the human race, as we know it, and human beings can advance. Otherwise, it will go down the other path. Now, this is a choice, right? It's a choice. And it's very hard to say to women in particular that they have the choice. And it's very hard to say, hey, that even if you're enjoying your job, right, and it's a competitive job, and it's a job that that maybe you weren't meant to do, but you have now done. You feel that that is your destiny. You feel that it is your destiny to do that in this world. Now, this is the very difficult thing because, like, supposing you were a female prime minister, how could you not think that that wasn't your destiny? And how could you not be seduced by the power? How could you not? Uh, how could you back away from that? It would be tempting to everyone, including myself. And you might even be seduced into thinking you're going to do some good. You can't, because you do not have any power. The God of this planet is the only power. I don't care if you're the Prime Minister, a male, female, or whatever. And I say this bluntly and with anger because I could be gone tomorrow. But it's the truth. Do not think you have any power. You don't. The God that rules the planet is the only power. And the more powerful you think you are, the less powerful you are, because that means that you are operating for the God even more. You have no power. You see, that sounds ridiculous. The further up you are, the less powerful you are, because the more you are operating and working for the God of the planet. So, oh dear. So I think I've exhausted myself, but the thing is, that's the point. I don't shout very often, I don't get this way, but this is the danger in this world, is the seduction of all these things. If you are the Prime Minister, a female Prime Minister for a few years, good luck to you. You'll accomplish nothing. Look at the world. Look at the world you're creating. Look at what you're part of. You're leading the human race into destruction. That's all you're doing, because you cannot do any good on your own, because you are not have any power. You are controlled by the God of the planet. Bow down to him and accept it and say it. But don't delude yourself that you are doing anything. You can't. You don't have the power. Human beings do not have the power. Not now that they have given up their power. Every day they've given it up more and more. Women have given it up now. They are now at rock bottom too. They're only interested in competing with their fellow human being. They're not interested in progressing the human race. That's gone out the window. They've lost sight of it. They've been directed down a delusionary path that leads over a cliff and into oblivion. But you can't tell them that, because that you can't tell them, and I don't blame them. I mean, you couldn't have told me even a few years ago either. And like I say, it's a choice though. It's still a choice. That's if you've got any way of thinking any different to how you're basically being directed. Because even myself, I mean, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know when I go out the door if I'm not directed to walk down a particular street. I'm just aware that I probably am completely controlled and directed to go down a particular street. So what do we do about it? That's the question. Well, I don't know. To be at least aware of it is part of it, whereas to continue on in that same vein, and that depends on what world you want. If you are happy with this world and the way it's going, now for some individuals, and I use the word individuals because I have heard this, because not everyone on this planet is the same. By that I mean that we talk about males and females, but even on this planet, not every so-called human that looks like a human, shall we say, is the same as another human. They all have different levels, in a way, of mental kind of Enlightenment, that's what I'm talking about. I'm using that word even though it sounds funny. Enlightenment means like this, right? I'm not enlightened, right? I'm aware I'm not enlightened. All human beings should be enlightened. But to be aware means that at least you are aware that you're not enlightened. Okay? So, so I'm aware that I'm not enlightened. And I know that every human being is meant to be enlightened. Most human beings are not aware, even, that they are meant to be enlightened, and they're not. Most human beings live in the logical world, but we do not really live in a logical world. It is not governed by logic. The God that controls this world is not logical. So how could the world be logical? The God that controls the world is not logical, and he has created a false, illogical world for us, and we play in it, and we think it is a logical world. So we operate under logic, and so we do not think in terms of being aware, much less that we should be so-called enlightened. Okay? That's pretty much how it works at a very basic level, even though at a so-called scientific level, if I really could get into that, and some people are much more, because I'm not a really smart, I don't want to use that word, bad word. That word is a word that I am eliminating from my vocabulary, but it is so prevalent that it's hard not to. I am not a super intelligent human being. Everyone should be. That's part of enlightenment, where human beings are super intelligent, to where their awareness and their intelligence is beyond any computer. But instead, we live in a logical world, so we think the reverse of that. This is just what the God directs people that way. And humans never actually stop and say, hey, is this how we are meant to go? At different periods, when things start to change, we have sometimes had some apprehension or some deliberation about it, but we still went along those paths. I'm sure when they first invented the first computer, a lot of people might have thought, oh, weird, we'll never adopt that. We'll never be controlled by that. And look at us. So, yeah, look at us. Look at us. We're completely controlled by it. And we're even more controlled because we think we control it. But how can we control it if we do not control this world? Because this is not our domain. The God that created this world of illusion, of deception, controls it. And it's common sense, in a way, even though it's all logic. Of course, you do have to accept that is the case, and that is where the problem lies, because most people are unaware that there is an entity, a controlling force. I'll fold up here, but even if you wanted to take it basic, right, because you only have to listen to some other videos even, it depends on how far you want to take everything, right? But if there is a God, then naturally that's the ultimate, right? That if that controls the planet. But even if you don't accept that, because most people probably wouldn't, because I wouldn't have either, even, not long ago. Even now it blows my mind, distresses me greatly in some ways, because humans are not in conjunction with that God, that God is totally controlling them. Like they're not even subservient to him, even acknowledging, which is strange, but they're still serving him. So that's kind of the weird thing about all this, because normally God's demand that you bow down to them, or at least the one that rules this one does, but he hasn't accomplished that. And it's kind of weird, though, that everyone is actually serving him. Every church serves the God, but they just think it's a different God, that's all, because they can't see the face. They can't actually put the entity on it, and they can't decipher what it really is all about, even from a biblical point of view, shall we say. But anyway, I'm going off the track. But even if you wanted to take it at a practical level, at a logical level, at this worldly level as we know it, where we think it's real, even though it's not, even if you just wanted to take it to the top of politics or whatever, which I don't get into and have never had any interest in, and I can see now why I probably haven't, because it is only the lower level of rubbish, of deception in a way. But at the same time, we're still dealing with that. But even if you wanted to take it just to the top of the world as we think we know it, common sense should tell most human beings that they are not really governed by powers that are actually beneficial to them, but they don't see that, and that's kind of strange in a way, because that should be kind of logical in a way, because you only have to look at the world as a whole to realise that. And yet there's no reason that it shouldn't be, even if it was controlled by other humans, which it's not. But because like I say, even amongst humans, if you are operating and working for the God and you're pretty much controlled by that, you're not really a human anymore anyway, you see. So even amongst humans there are different types, and there are robotic types of human beings, shall we say. There's no doubt about that. You only have to look around, really. And by that I mean that they're not functioning at the proper high human level. They're so far away from this so-called enlightenment that I spoke of, and even awareness, that they're much less human than your average cat or dog. They look like the most enlightened being in comparison. Oh, it's not funny. It's not funny. It would be a joke if it was some sort of science fiction movie, but but like I say, humans still have the choice. So if they want that future, because maybe, I mean, I could be wrong in the sense that maybe this dark domain is meant to be here. It serves some purpose, that this is meant to be the dark end of the universe, and that it is a unique place in the sense that it is that dark domain and is not meant to be light. That's another way of looking at it. So maybe, are humans meant to go down the dark path and meant to end up away from another level, away from the, are they meant to experiment and go down the technological kind of level, the technological route? Is that a test? Is that how it is meant to be? Is this, you could almost say, is this really the true hell of the universe? I think so, but I definitely think so. It feels like that to me every day. I'm not worried about going to hell, because it's here. It's here now. It's in my life, and I've no doubt that it's in a lot of other human beings' lives. And while you are here, you can't get out of it on your own. It has to be a joint effort. But while humans are separate and are competing with one another instead of combining with one another, which is the trick of it, even the male and the female, which are meant to reproduce and keep the only way that the human race has survived till now, I believe, is because they have procreated at such a rate that they've been able to stop the dark influences from totally taking over. But that will not be always either, because once we become artificial and go along an artificial line, that will be taken from us. So we will be forced to go down that technological route. Now, humans are actually choosing it as well. And you might say, what is the difference between making a baby in a lab as opposed to making it naturally? That's a question. That is a question. And at the present time, that is very hard for me to tell human beings that every time you do that, and I feel very sorry for people, as I've said before, if they want to have babies and they can't and they use technology for it, whatever. But they are the doomsday of the human race, even though they don't realise it. It's okay to live in this selfish world and say, I want this, so I'm going to have it. And that's okay. But unfortunately, it isn't okay, because even though, I'd be quite happy to give those people what they want. But the thing is that the process that they use to get that is the doomsday of the human race. And they don't know it, because it seems simple now. But the further we go down all these paths, in the end, it becomes a norm. And once something becomes a norm and becomes much more widespread, in the end, it takes over. Now, the implications for that for human beings down the track, because I'm not talking about just like even now, even though, to be quite frank, I think anyone is mad to bring kids in a funny kind of way into the world now, because it is so negative. We need to sort it out. But at the same time, if we don't keep breeding at a certain rate, we will become extinct. So it's kind of like, it's a very complicated situation. The God that rules the planet knows it. And humans have now got very little choice. Now, humans could well, as time goes on, accept this at some point and go down that path. Now, I'm saying that I think it could be the extinction of the human race as we know it. And when I say as we know it, I really do mean the extinction of the human race, not just as we know it. In other words, not just that I'm saying that, oh, well, we could become a transhuman, a different type of human. I am saying that it will be the extinction of the human race. Even the people who go along that line do not realise this. You can't have transhuman. Transhuman is non-human. It will be a replica of the God that rules the planet, not us. That's what I think. So it's because that's much more technological. Now you'd say, why, you'd have to say then, like, if the God that rules the planet is technological but we ain't, why are we here, and why has it created this realm, and why are we in it, and why has it got control over it? That's the dilemma, and that's the question. But that is because it's a long, long thing, and you'd have to believe it. But that is because you could say that we are out of time. And by that I mean that we are in the wrong place in the wrong time. We're not meant to be here, is what I believe, but that's just me. If you believe and there are some beings on this planet who are meant to be here. They belong in this realm, and it is their realm, and they will have no problem with the technological future. The trouble is that not everyone is that. And that a lot of the human beings think that they are technological, but they are not. You see, this is very tricky. So how do you convince a human being who thinks it's technological into knowing that it's not? Because if it thinks it's technological, it's going to go down the path of technological, you see. Because it would think that's natural, and it would also bow down to the technological God that rules this technological domain. This is very complicated. It blows my mind. I don't fully understand it. I understand no science. I am not a smart person. Use that word again, mustn't use that one. I'm not a super intelligent person. I'm limited, like everyone else. But I'm aware, but I'm not enlightened. The enlightened know these things, but they know them for real. I only know them like you, like I'm saying to you, at a distant kind of level. I'm passionate about it, so there must be something in me that's reaching out and saying, hey, there must still be some element to where I can sense some sort of truth, but you know, but that's an ability too, I guess, but I don't know. But I think that human beings are meant to be able to know the truth from the false, but I think we've lost that because we've become so deceived, and I was too, all my life. So it's only something that I'm noticing now, but I have been forced into it, so that doesn't give, I'm not giving myself much credit. It's like if you're plonked into a war zone, you become aware that you're in a war. Don't have to be smart to realise that, whereas it does take smartness if you're in a peaceful spot to realise that there's war all around you and to realise the reality of the world. So I'm not giving myself any credit, I'm just putting it out there, shall we say, you know, for what it's worth, and I'm sure it's worth nothing to most people, even though it is everything, really. You know, the seriousness can't be overstressed. But, you know, I mean, we see the movies and we laugh, War of the Worlds, End of the World, all this. It's a reality. But it's very hard to explain that to people when they can't see the enemy, when there isn't, you know, like an invasion right in front of them in a big way. It's an insidious invasion. It's a bit like I say, if human beings are being reduced insidiously, even like I was saying, the female, where they're deluded and they think that they're progressing by their almost aggressive behaviour against even their male counterpart, which is their only hope for the future. You know, if human beings separate and compete, they're gone. You know, then you bow down to the God that rules this planet, and that's the path you take. These are the choices. I'm saying, you know, for some, as I say, for some beings that are on this planet, that will be fine because they are already technological. But I'm saying for the human ones, it will be a negative path.